productivity, winning strategies, and aligning employer-employee goals. If this sounds like something your business could use more of, then you've come to the right place. The Business Mechanic Show with your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Let Vaughn show you how to develop, improve, and jumpstart your business. So now, please welcome the host of the Business Mechanic, Vaughn Sigmund.
Welcome to the Business Mechanic Show. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmund, co-founder of Results Driven Leadership. I've got another really good show for you today. Now, obviously, as proponent of results driven leadership, I'd like to share with you one of the key leadership perspectives that many managers have trouble with. The critical aspect of leadership, and it's all around when to be flexible and when to be firm, flexible, when to enforce the rules and when to overlook things a little bit. This balance, as you well imagine, is essential for any manager aiming to lead effectively, drive results, and at the same time fostering a positive and empowering team environment. It's this crazy balance. It takes time, it takes practice, but if you're not focused on creating your own approach to this, your own critical thinking skills, when to do it, when not to do it, what's right, what's wrong, what's going to be in best interest for the team, best interest for the company, you're going to struggle with this. You're likely to end up on one side or the other. There's an equal balance that I want to shoot for, helping you figure out today. So let's break it down. Let's break it down into a straightforward, no nonsense way, much like explaining how to ride a bike. We're talking about results driven leadership, but let's keep it as simple as pedaling forward. What's this leadership thing really about? Imagine leadership like riding a bike. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about enjoying the ride. And at the same time, ensuring your biking buddies are keeping up and having a good time. It's the balance between speed, results, and ensuring everyone's comfortable and confident on their bicycle. The team dynamics. In my journey through my leadership development years, and certainly with results-driven leadership, as I share with you, I've learned that achieving outstanding results goes hand in hand with a leadership style that values and nurtures relationships within the team. And it's about creating a synergy between driving for success and caring for the people who make that success possible. They've got to want to do it for you. Your success is completely derived by their success. And again, we're back to that balance. What are you doing as a leader to drive their buy-in, their commitment, their respect, their trust of you, their leader, to get them to want to be successful for you? Most important thing I think you have to always keep in mind, remember the emotional bank account. Let me tell you a little story. Quick story. I'm going to take a very long story and I'm going to make it as quick as I can possibly make it in the interest of your time. Story about David. David was a good sales consultant. Not the best, but far from the worst. Now, he worked in a location that had over 200 sales consultants, and there was about 12 sales managers. Big team. And David was one of these guys that was consistent and steady. How you could describe him. However, David was a very challenging individual to manage, especially if you were a newer manager without a high level of confidence, and one that sometimes took exception to being challenged, because very often without that confidence, that self-esteem, when somebody challenges what you're asking them to do or a decision you made, that is a personal affront. and you act accordingly, fight or flight. And David was one of these people who constantly challenged decisions. And he asked uncomfortable questions. And very often, some of these sales managers weren't prepared to respond in a way that showed their confidence because they weren't that confident. And amongst the sales management team, he was not really well liked. And it was really them, not David, that was at fault. It was their self-esteem, not David, playing armchair psychologist. But me, there maybe was a time in my career 40 years ago, I would have been challenged by David too. But through the years, I've learned to really love working with guys that challenge me, the contrarians, people who push back a little bit, kept me sharp, kept me on my toes. And I recognize individuals like David, when they ask questions, come to find out many others had that same question or were just unwilling to ask. So David served a big purpose, but very often went unrecognized. And I'm going to say this just as a little bit of a break right now. They're doing construction outside of my office. If you hear banging going on, that's for real. I'm sorry. I've been waiting all day to try to get this done. They ain't stopping, and I can't stop. So I got to get this going. If my day's ever going to finish up, and I'm going to get this out to you. So I apologize for any racket that's going on in the background here. So I'm going to skip, again, in the interest of time, some of the bigger points in all this. But as the story goes, David poured it on one month. He busted his ass and sold the most he had ever sold and beat the entire sales team in total sales. And in doing so, David, his methodology during all this was he worked 7 days a week, 30 solid days, 12 to 14 hours a day. With all this, he achieved a very large commission check, which was what he was looking for, what he was motivated to do, go earn a bunch of money. Not to get in all the details, but he had a personal goal that he needed that extra money for, and he put it into this gear that he'd never used before and got it done. Not sustainable, but he got it done. And while all this was happening, David was busting his butt and he was hitting all kinds of records, beating everybody's butt. Not one single sales manager recognized that David was putting this work in, much less getting the results he was getting. This is that emotional bank account reference. They weren't making any deposits because they didn't really like David. David wasn't their favorite. And so they overlooked this pain in the butt David and all he was getting done. And by the way, they made money off of David. They got bonuses based on David's big results too. He had skin in the game. But they didn't give him one single compliment. Not one. Not one piece of recognition all month. And I assume the reasons were because of what I mentioned previously. Not the most popular guy. End of the month's coming up. It's the 29th day of the month. And after running circles around almost all of his peers, to which not one damn thing was said to him, he, as you might imagine, was a little tired. And David was scheduled to come in at 9 o'clock. He didn't show up till 10:30. That wasn't right. Maybe it wasn't wrong either. But in David's mind, it was justified. Cut me a little slack. I'm not taking a day off all month. I've worked 12 and 14-hour days. I can come in an hour or so late. Come on. Well, unfortunately, his manager there didn't see it that way. So when he shows up late, immediately, his shadows barely cleared the door. Manager pulls him into the office and firmly tells him that being late is against the rules, it's against policy, and he better not do it again, or you're going to get written up. Big withdrawal from that emotional bank account. Here's this guy riding a high. Nobody's been fueling that high. The only feedback he gets is negative for being late after he's been busting his butt all month, working every day of the week. This is an extreme example, but you get where I'm coming from. You get what I'm laying down, right? Now the manager rightfully was just enforcing policy, right? This is when being right is often wrong. What impact do you think this had on David? If you guessed that it took the drive right out of him, you would be absolutely right. And later, when I got this story from David, he didn't come whining to me. He didn't come complaining. I had to drag this out of him. But he shared this story with me, and his statement to me was, I'll never bust my ass for these guys again. Believe me. You know what? I believed him. So doing the right thing, this manager did exactly the wrong thing. He just took this wind right out of this guy's sails and was never going to get any further repeat of this kind of behavior because he did the wrong thing. And would this manager have done the same thing with a more popular sales consultant? Would the management team have given a more agreeable sales consultant some attaboys and recognition for the achievements during the month? You get the point. Making withdrawals from the emotional bank account of your team members is inevitable. You're going to have to. But in this flexible versus firm scenario, you have to develop the skill set, the critical thinking to stop and consider, is this the right thing to do? Am I being fair? Am I being consistent? Do I have enough in the bank account to make a withdrawal? Would it have been the end of the world to say nothing in David's case? What if you just let it pass? Him showing up a little late in its totality? Of course not. I think that he deserved to pass. That's my leadership style. Learn to overlook. To be a results-driven leader, you must learn the art of overlooking. Flexible, firm, there's a right time and a wrong time. You got to give some wiggle room. And it's almost at this point, it's like you're riding your bike with training wheels. First, you need to learn to ride. When you first learn to ride, you start with training wheels, right? I did. And that's like giving your team the space to try things out, make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. It's not about letting them veer off the path. It's about providing enough support so they can get eventually to the point where they're riding confidently on their own. And one of the most empowering actions a leader can take is to give their team members room to breathe, make decisions, take ownership of their work, and yes, to even make mistakes. Because mistakes are learning opportunities. But the mistake must be learned from, not repeated over and over. Somebody makes a mistake, they learn from it, they don't happen again. We join in creating a learning opportunity. We don't talk about it anymore. We don't make a mountain out of a molehill. What's a different thing, flexible, firm, if this is a mistake that's constantly being repeated? Yeah, you got to get firm on that. And believe me, this firm and flexible, I'm not proposing about you being lenient. It's about showing trust in your team's capabilities and judgment. When you give slack appropriately, you're not just delegating tasks, you're delegating trust, which in turn fosters a strong sense of autonomy and accountability. All of your team. And for you, In your leadership and management, you've got to set the guardrails. You've got to know the path. They've got to know your path. And just like in biking, you need to know the rules of the road. This is where a clear guideline, set of clear guidelines and expectations come in. It's not so much about restricting freedom, fine line there. It's about ensuring everyone knows how to ride safely and effectively so that the whole group can stay together and reach their destination. And there are times on the journey to this destination that the situation calls for a firmer hand. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to maintain order, ensure that the team's efforts are aligned with the organization's goals, mission, vision, policies. This is where the clear setting of expectations and boundaries come into play. Enforcing rules and policies consistently and fairly doesn't just maintain order, it creates framework within your team so that they can operate efficiently and effectively, knowing exactly what's expected of them. Aha, there it is. It's one of the most important things is your team must always know what's expected of them. They need to know when you're going to be firm. They need to know when you're going to be a little more flexible. They need to know that you're going to be fair. But the goal is always not to let things run amok and have the inmates running the asylum before you start enforcing. No, when you wait, you're creating confusion. That's where things start getting out of hand. That's where you don't have the guardrails up. And you'll build your frustration. Then you're going to come down like a 90-pound hammer. And that's when you get to be confusing. They don't know what's expected of them, and you come across as a complete schmuck. Firm but fair and constantly enforcing the rules. Don't let things get too out of hand before you say something. See something, say something. And when it's small, it's much easier to tap it into place with the right tone, right coaching methodology. I'm not sure. I'll give you another example. I was working with a team at a trade show a few weeks ago. Brand new salesperson, first trade show they'd ever been to. The HR person is there, the sales manager there, I'm there. And this new guy, Eddie, he goes off and it's a great education for him. He's running around the trade show, learning the product, learning the industry. Great thing to be doing. And this is an industry, things were pretty open. And he walks by one booth and free cocktail bar. Eddie, not knowing any better, grabs himself a margarita or whatever he had, gin and tonic. I forget what it was, but he has it in his hand. He comes walking back to his company's booth. The HR person looks at him and says, "Is that a cocktail?" Manager is looking at him and says, "Oh, holy crap. Does Eddie have a cocktail?" And he says, "Yeah, they gave it to me over that other booth." All of a sudden, the manager and the HR guy are off. You know, we need to write him up. This is, I can't believe he did that. I'm hearing all this. Part of my job is come in and coach these guys a little bit and say, "Hey guys, come on." You ever tell him, is it written in a policy? Did you ever warn him before? "Hey, Eddie, there may be cocktails here. Don't have one. Not while you're working." Oh, you just assumed that's that implied expectation. You just assume that he's supposed to know this. That's not fair to Eddie. So how do we handle it? "Hey, Eddie, listen, just so you know, in the future, we frown on drinking while we're at work. I get it. It's tempting. You didn't know any better, but don't let it happen again. Okay. Now you know the rules. Good." That's all that needed to be said. It was not a write-up, wasn't a damn big deal made out of it. But if you enforce the little things early on, don't make it a big deal more than it needs to be in fear about it, being avoidant of unpredictability and inconsistency at all costs. That's what you're shooting for. And yes, It requires you to have some difficult conversations, but they get to be much more difficult as time goes by without course correction, without steady course correction. So it's up to you early on. Don't just close your eyes, bury your head in the sand. Don't say anything. You got to say something, but say it in a way that's going to be encouraging, not discouraging, not beating their head in, and not making it a bigger deal than it is. The most important element of being an effective leader is your team knows what's expected of them. That's one of those critical thinking aspects you have to ask yourself before you act, before you decide whether you're going to be firm or flexible, is do they clearly know what's expected of them? Have I done my job? And it's a balancing act. You got to know when to steer and when to coast. The real skill in biking, as in leadership, is knowing when to steer tightly and when to let the path guide you. Unfortunately, it's not a rigid formula. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not a calculation. It's about feeling. It's about feeling the rhythm of the ride, understanding your team's pace, and adjusting your leadership style to match. It's about making the ride smooth and enjoyable for everyone. And the true art of leadership lies in knowing when to flex and when to stand firm. Never going to be a one size fits all. It's not easy. If it was easy, anybody could do it. And you've been selected because of your work ethic, your skill set, your knowledge, your intelligence, being a leadership role. Now you're continuing to learn the art of leadership. And the art of leadership requires a deep understanding of your team. Some people you need to be more firm with because they're going to be constantly challenging the edges. Some you can be more flexible with. They've earned the right for your flexibility. Their individual strengths, their weaknesses, all that comes into consideration. It's about being adaptable, knowing when a situation calls for empathy and flexibility, and when it demands decisiveness and firmness. So at the end of the day, you've got to keep your team motivated. They must be engaged. And through your balance, well, that's what sets great leaders apart. And you're going to encounter some tough hills. And those hills need to be guided by some principles. And it's in these moments, things get tough. You lean on your biking know-how, shifting gears, adjusting your posture, pacing yourself. It's like in leadership, you draw on your principles to navigate the challenges, balancing the team's energy with the goals ahead, critical thinking. Facing tough decisions is part and parcel of leadership. And in these tough moments, the principles of results-driven leadership serve as a compass. By weighing factors like individual capabilities, team dynamics, contributions, the organization's overarching goals, you can navigate these challenges with a balanced approach that neither compromises on the team's autonomy or the organization's objectives. Consistency. You want a nice, smooth pedal stroke. Whether you're given space or setting boundaries, being consistent is like maintaining that smooth pedal stroke. It builds trust in your leadership, respect in you, because you're showing trust and respect in them. The steady pace reassures your fellow bikers that you know the route and you're in it together and you have each other's backs. It's what builds trust between you and your team. Being fair, being transparent, being consistent in your actions, making it about them, not about you. That reassures your team members that they are valued and there's a clear rationale behind every decision you make. And it's this trust that's the bedrock of a high-performing team. And the goal of the ride, just like any results-driven leader, is about creating an environment where everyone can pedal confidently, knowing they're supported, yet free to ride in their style. There's not one way to do anything. It's not just about speed or the technique. It's about building a team that enjoys the ride and thrives together. And the heart of results-driven leadership is the belief that effective leadership is about empowering your team to excel in an environment that's both supportive and structured. It's not merely a choice between giving slack or enforcing rules. It's about cultivating a culture of trust, accountability, growth. This is what drives a team towards achieving remarkable results for you. And as I wrap this up, keep it simple, ride with purpose. Think of leadership like guiding a group bike ride. Keep the direction clear, adjust your pace to the group's needs, tackle challenges with confidence. Don't take things personally. Work on your confidence and self-esteem. Think about where that question or that challenge is coming from. Maybe it's something you left out. It's almost always you. And it's not just about reaching the end. It's about ensuring the journey is rewarding for everyone involved. And remember, the essence of a good ride, like good leadership, is how you navigate the journey together. Keep it straightforward, stay focused on the path ahead, and the destination will naturally come into view. Let's lead with clarity, integrity, and a steady hand on the handlebars. The journey of leadership is about striking the right balance between flexibility and firmness, autonomy and accountability. And by embracing the principles I spoke with you about today, you're not just making decisions, you're shaping a culture, one that propels your team towards success. You're never going to be any better than they are. And you're never going to be any better than what you can get them bought into and supporting you and your success. So lead with purpose. Navigate the challenges with confidence, and let's drive results together. It's not just about the destination, it's about the journey and how we guide our teams through it. Let's continue to lead with insight, integrity, and the relentless pursuit of excellence.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of the Business Mechanic Show. If today's content resonates with you, then you're going to love what we have to offer. From performance coaching designed to enhance your potential, to executive coaching that guides leaders to steer their ships towards greater success. Remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself and your team. For those seeking flexible learning options, we're excited to share our online and in-person management leadership classes. These aren't just your typical courses. They are meticulously crafted, ensuring that they align with your unique needs and aspirations. And the best part, prices start at just $47 per month, making top-tier coaching and training accessible for everyone. Your growth, both personally and professionally, can have a ripple effect, the one I call the transformational triangle of change. The skills you learn, the perspectives you gain, and the efficiencies you create can translate into increased revenues. Let the Business Mechanic Show be your guide. Check out our website, rdltraining.com, to discover more details on our programs and coaches. We have a link in the show notes to guide you there. Until next time, we're out of here.